Hello, my name is Abhay Doshi. I'm a graduate student with the Department of English at the University of Minnesota. I would like to thank the organizers of this conference for giving me the opportunity to present my talk on this platform. The title of my talk today is Ecology and the Critique of History, the God of Small Things as a Humanist Text. At the crux of Arundhati Roy's The God of Small Things is a critique of history, a term that in her use signifies the full range of oppressive forces, including patriarchy, class exploitation, casteism, colonialism, and anthropocentric assaults on nature. Critics have argued that in opposition to history, Roy advances a radical ecology that dismantles the privileged position of the human over the non-human. While acknowledging the profound ecological sensitivity of the novel's narrative, my paper will argue instead that we can only grasp the radical nature of Roy's ecological vision by retaining an emphasis on certain core humanistic ideals. Before I proceed, I should provide a brief plot summary. The story works through two timelines that unfold simultaneously. The first, set in the 1960s, explores the childhood of two twins, Rahel and Esther. Set in the village Ayamenam in the state of Kerala in India, the twins grow up as outsiders to the Syrian Christian community, given that their mother, Ammu, marries and divorces a Bengali Hindu. Ammu's widowed mother is known as Papachi, and her father was known as Ammu's widowed mother is known as Mamachi, and her father was known as Papachi. Her aunt, Baby Kochumma, remains unmarried and bitter over her unreciprocated love for a man named Father Mulligan. Ammu's brother, Chaco, runs the family's pickle factory and, like Ammu, is divorced. His ex-wife, Margaret, is British, and together they have a daughter named Sophie Mole, Mole as in child. Ammu has an illicit affair with a man named Velutha, who is an employee at their factory, a member of an untouchable caste, and a communist. The fallout of the affair results in the twins running away from home to punish their mother for being rude to them when she is found out. However, Sophie Mole, who insists on joining them, drowns during the course of their attempted escape. A false case accusing Velutha of raping Ammu is registered against him by the scheming Baby Kochumma to punish him for his transgression. This culminates in his arrest and subsequent death at the police station. Later, when Baby Kochumma's plan is in danger of backfiring, the twins are also coerced into stating that Velutha attempted to kidnap them. Comrade Pillai, who is a local communist leader, betrays Velutha by refusing to support him, but later seizes the opportunity to speak on his behalf after Velutha is already dead. When Ammu reveals the truth of her affair with Velutha, the twins are separated, with Esther being sent to live with his father, and Ammu is exiled from Ayamenam. The second timeline, set in the 1990s, the time when globalization has invaded Ayamenam, deals with Esther's return to the village and culminates in an incestuous affair between him and his twin sister. By this point in the novel, Ammu is already dead. Critics have noted that the novel places great emphasis on the experiences of the non-human, and as such evinces a profoundly anti-anthropocentric worldview. Arthi Bhadde, for instance, has argued that against the logic of human ascendancy, which is found in characters like Baby Kochumma, who manages a garden, and Papachi, who was an entomologist, Roy posits a third space of subjectivity formation, which Bhadde refers to as the backwaters sphere. The backwaters of Kerala, Bhadde argues, are an ecological collectivity where bonds among humans are enabled and offset by bonds forged across human, animal, and vegetable lines, an ecological collectivity that sets non-human subjects alongside human ones, and organizes human memory and environmental inscription and adaptation, and tempers human ascendancy and exceptionalism by representing reason as at times dependent on, and not simply transcendental to, the sensory perceptions and cognitive skills that guide our habitation of the world. Bhadde explains that in the novel, the twins are the characters who are socialized in the backwaters sphere of Kerala, which gives them markedly different values from Baby Kochumma and Papachi, in that they learn to let that world speak, while their human silence conveys humility, making their ecological literacy part of a larger acknowledgement of interdependence between the human and non-human worlds. While I accept that the novel emphasizes interdependence between the human and the non-human, and agree that the novel does make an argument for human humility, I take as my point of departure the need for self-reflexive reason and human agency as necessary components of any project that seeks to remake the anthropocentric world in which the twins live. In his philosophy of right, Hegel distinguishes natural laws from the laws of right, arguing that while the former are simply there and valid as they stand, with the latter, the spirit of reflection comes into play. The diversity of these laws makes us see that they are not absolute, and through the spirit of reflection, we recognize that these laws are laid down or derived from human beings. A little further in the text, Hegel links thought to freedom, arguing that the will, which is necessarily constituted by freedom, is thinking translating itself into existence. This capacity for thought, Hegel asserts, is what distinguishes the human from the animal. The human in this Hegelian tradition can therefore be conceptualized as the entity that has the capacity to critically grasp that which it has made, or the laws of right, and remake it, thereby realizing freedom. This kind of humanism that emphasizes self-reflexive reason and human agency is not necessarily equivalent to the logic of human ascendancy, which the novel certainly rejects. The novel instead makes an implicit demand for the kind of humanism that I have outlined as necessary to undo the logic of ascendancy, itself a component of history, something that human beings have made and are unable to realize as such. Notably, Roy writes that the love laws, a term that she sometimes uses synonymously with history, lay down who can be loved, lay down who should be loved and how much. Her choice of the phrase lay down is interesting because it is the same as that which is employed by Hegel in his characterization of the laws of right, suggesting what is in most likelihood an unintentional yet deeply significant similarity in thought process. The love laws, which are a crucial component of history, are products of human thought and human action, just as the laws of right are for Hegel. To be free then necessarily demands that we come to reflect upon these laws and remake them. The twins, while embodying an anti-anthropocentric and ecological consciousness, remain vulnerable to the violence of the anthropocentric world because such a critical consciousness is not fully developed in them. Readers are informed early in the novel that while Rahel and Esther never looked alike, the confusion over who is who and which is which lay in a deeper, more secret place, as though they were a rare breed of Siamese twins, physically separate but with joint identities. The twins as children are not discrete individuals sealed off from other individuals or the human environment, or the non-human environment, but are held together in a unified subjectivity, the same intersubjectivity that allows them to forge close links to the non-human world, an argument that is made by Alicia Cohn. The novel therefore subverts the Bildungsroman tradition. Rather than coming of age, the twins already possess in their childhood a kind of maturity that the grown-up characters such as Baby Kochima and Papachi lack. By the second timeline, in the aftermath of the violence that the twins have suffered, we see, however, that this intersubjectivity between them has been destroyed, and the ecological backwaters to which they are so intimately connected are also under assault. Rather than realizing human maturity, as is usually the case in the Bildungsroman tradition, this maturity is destroyed, suggesting not cause for celebration, but lament. Roy also subverts the rhetoric of demoting the human through her presentation of Chaco, who is a deeply complex character. Openly hypocritical, yet earnest in his love for his daughter, genial but frequently nasty and ultimately a violent bully, progressive yet conniving, Chaco says that history is like an old house at night. To know one's history, Chaco asserts, is to go inside the history house and listen to those whispers, to look at the books and pictures on the walls and smell the smells. Chaco insists, however, that we cannot go in because we have been locked out, and that when we look in through the windows, all we see are shadows. He also tells the twins of the Earth woman by making them imagine that the Earth, 4,600 million years old, is a 46-year-old woman. Chaco explains to them that human civilization as we know it began only 2 hours ago in the Earth woman's life. He remarks that this realization is awe-inspiring and humbling, and then adds that all of contemporary history, with its literature, philosophy, and all of their lives will be nothing more than a mere twinkle in the eyes of the Earth woman. These extended metaphors, rendered by Chaco in what is called his speaking aloud voice, lend a melancholic character to the inability to fully know one's history, a melancholia that sublimates the trauma of this experience into poetic beauty that substitutes struggle for acceptance of one's own insignificance. By associating this process of sublimation with Chaco, an unreliable and contradictory character, we can infer that Roy herself refuses to accept this condition of being locked out of the history house as eternal. She presents the twins as a foil to Chaco's grandiose claims about the history house. For on hearing Chaco, the twins imagine not the metaphorical history house, but the actual house of a dead pedophilic Englishman. This is the house in which the twins will witness Velutha being killed by the touchable policeman, a scene that will haunt them forever. While Chaco poeticizes the violence of not knowing one's history, the twins have to actually suffer it. The notion that they are merely a twinkle in the eyes of the Earth woman offers them no comfort. The experience of the twins punctures the rhetoric of Chaco, suggesting that the implicit demand of the narrative is that we do enter the history house, despite Chaco's assertions that we cannot. Alicia Cohn argues that the critical consciousness lacking in the twins is found, at least to some extent, in the third-person narrator. The extra-diegetic narrator understands history's machinations in ways that the twins cannot, and the description of Velutha's murder is therefore accompanied by commentary. The narrator likens the beating of Velutha to cracking an egg to make an omelette or opening a tap to reveal the mechanical precision of the police's actions. The narrator informs readers that the police acted with economy, not frenzy, because they were not battling an epidemic, merely inoculating the community against a larger outbreak. The emphasis on the clinical and impersonal nature of the killings is linked to the narrator's insight that the police were merely history's henchmen, sent to do its bidding, a realization that the twins themselves are too young to understand. The policemen, the narrator informs us, were driven by feelings that were primal, yet paradoxically wholly impersonal, and then explains the links between the killing of Velutha and civilization's fear of nature, man's fear of women, and power's fear of the powerless. The third-person narrator, therefore, has a much deeper understanding of what is going on in this scene than either the twins, who can only watch in horror, or the police themselves, who can only carry out history's bidding. That is to say, it's the third-person narrator that can place this violence in its context. Roy therefore uses the third-person narrator to help readers recognize the killing of Velutha as a synecdoche for civilization's or history's violence. Moreover, history is not presented as some transcendental force that simply makes the police obey its will. By writing that the feelings are primal, yet paradoxically wholly impersonal, Roy makes it clear that history's violence has as its basis human beings themselves. This moment is the closest perhaps that Roy comes to showing any awareness of alienation in the Marxist sense. Our own primal feelings have become a foreign force to which both victims and perpetrators are subject. Even Comrade Pillai and Inspector Matthew, the inspector who registers the false case against Velutha, don't know how the world works. They are likened simply to parts of a machine. Knowing these primal impulses and grasping how they become this alienated, all-encompassing force of history requires self-knowledge and understanding of the kind that I have been arguing is lacking among the characters in the novel, although it is found in the third-person narration. Moreover, by referring to these as primal impulses, Roy also disturbs the civilization-nature dichotomy. suggesting that simple solidarity between the human and the non-human is insufficient for any radical project. What is needed instead is a deeper understanding of how history becomes what it is, what role we play in making it what it is, so that we can reclaim it and make it more humane. While the narrative does foreground non-human voices and presents through the twins a human consciousness that is capable of forging solidarity with the non-human, such solidarity is also revealed as being vulnerable to the violence of history. The intersubjectivity between the twins and the backwaters of Kerala means that their fates are conjoined. By the second timeline, Roy writes that the river that the twins both love and respect now smells of shit and pesticides bought with World Bank loans, and most of the fish have died. History that inflicts its violence on the twins and on Velutha also inflicts its violence on nature, suggesting that the stakes of realizing certain core humanistic values extends to preventing such anthropocentric assaults on nature itself. We see therefore that both the perpetrators of history's violence, such as the police and Comrade Pillai, and the victims of it, such as the twins or even Velutha himself, lack any deep understanding of how history works, rendering them subject to history rather than subjects of it. By associating this understanding of history with the third-person narrator, the narrator who also shows us the pain that history causes, Roy appears to demand that we as readers must strive to understand history and its devices, a demand that is carried forward in the political essays that she has since written. The humanist values of self-reflexive reason and human agency have themselves come to be seen as complicit in the projects of colonialism and anthropocentrism in several wings of the humanities and among certain strands of the left and environmental movements in general. My paper therefore suggests that simply knowing the violence of history in which assaults on the non-human play a central role itself is predicated on deploying these very values, as seen through my reading of The God of Small Things, a novel that is widely acknowledged as anti-colonial and anti-anthropocentric in its outlook. While these humanist values do still retain a certain human-non-human distinction, as the non-human lacks the capacity to become the subject of its own laws, the challenge of our times becomes to retain that distinction without relapsing into a violent hierarchy. Thank you.